Hi there, this is I'm Dr. Randy Bach, and we are here today, September 19, 2022, with a fascinating session of Newton Taxpayer Association Taxpayer Talk on Newton TV. And I'm honored to have with us perhaps what might seem an unusual guest for our general thrust, which is the concerns of the Newton taxpayers, Newton citizens in general. So that's a very local concern, but I have somebody with us who actually has kind of global concerns which affect us all on a immediate local basis as well. I have Professor Dick Lindzen, whom I'm honored to know and call a friend. I'm going to let him talk about his own things himself, his ideas and so forth. But you know, he probably would be called a climate denier. I think that's kind of begging the question, a bad term of art. He's a professor of
atmospheric sciences.
Thank you. I'm going to let you fill in the atmosphere, both for your introduction and for the general topics we might be able to cover.
Well, I'll leave it to you as to what you want to cover for the taxpayers. There's no question that this is an issue that has a magnetic appeal to politicians. It's an excuse to control everything. And when they don't get their way, they elevate the level of fear. I mean, one of the things that's fascinating is something that the UN was designed to study, designated to study. And I participated in that at one time as the lead author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And, it's biased. The purpose of it was to support control of carbon dioxide. But nevertheless, there were limits to how far they could go. The politicians who write the non-scientific parts can go further.
Mm-hmm.
Never in the scientific part was there the least hint that we were dealing with an existential threat.
Right.
The worst they could think of was in 50 to 100 years, the GDP might be 3% less than
and it might not.
Yeah.
It might not.
Yeah. That was a worst case, and for reasons I could explain, you're right. It might not, it probably won't.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, when politicians found that you could deal with the energy sector and they weren't getting quite the response they hoped, remember this issue has been around since '88 in the public sphere, earlier before, they kept cranking up the fear level until now in the media, in the Boston Globe, it's an existential threat. You have this thing, Puerto Rico at the moment is getting hit by a Category 1 hurricane.
Mm-hmm. That's never happened before, right?
We never used to mention Category 1s. We waited for Category 3 or something.
Oh, I see. They go down. The
Yeah.
Category 1 is the mildest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Puerto Rico getting hit by a hurricane is not necessarily news.
It's true. A lot of people can lose electricity because the infrastructure is bad.
Right.
But now they're thinking of making the infrastructure worse in order to prevent climate change.
Right. So I kind of, we could, listen to you expound for hours, literally. And I have actually gone on YouTube to look at some of your lectures. I commend people to go do that. It's Dick Lindzen, Lindzen, or Richard, professor at MIT. And he's got fascinating stuff. So I recommend you do that. What I liked, and maybe I'll just put some of these things out as talking points. I like big picture. What we tend to see, and what you've mentioned in some of your lectures, is that what we see for carbon dioxide variations are kind of an exaggeration of what, if you looked at in the general scheme of things, is not that much variation. I think you have 100 years, and you show some of the climate variability in measurements, and the overall line is very minimal.
Yeah.
But when you blow it up, you just take that line, and absent everything else, it looks bigger.
I think, this is one of the major clues that there's something wrong with this issue. It depends so thoroughly on the fact that most people cannot read graphs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you look at the financial pages, whether the Dow Jones goes up 10 points or 1,000 points, the graph looks kind of the same.
Right.
And so people get used to thinking, did it go up or down?
Right.
And they don't realize you can't measure this to 1/10 of a degree, 2/10 of a degree.
Right. So contextually, carbon dioxide has varied independent of human existence. And those variations, I mean, again, in your graph goes back, I'm not sure how many hundreds of thousands or millions of years. The carbon dioxide goes up and down and up and down. We're clearly on an upper part of that up and down, though, correct?
Well, it depends on how far back you go. For most of the Earth's history, and certainly for the whole period of advanced life, 600 million years, CO2 has been many times the present level.
Right.
Most plants today are starved for CO2 because they evolved when it was thousands of parts per million.
This is an interesting point. I'm going to be interrupting you from time to time.
Sure.
I apologize, but I was looking, this is a theory that I had at a poker game like 25 years ago, and everyone was worrying then about carbon dioxide. And I said, well, you know, my understanding is that you have more carbon dioxide, plants will grow faster because they're going to, this is the
and it's true.
And the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, I think if you ask people on the street, I've done this, ask them what percent of the air we breathe is carbon dioxide, people say, oh, 5%, 10%, so forth. And it is literally how much?
0.04.
Okay, so that means when they talk about 350 parts per million.
Yeah.
And so this is not 1%, it's 4% of 1%.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. I mean,
so
but that's, how should I put it, that can be misleading. It's terribly important, CO2. The increase we've had in the last 50 years have probably created 14% increase in
mass.
You know, so it's not irrelevant, and it's true enough, it does make a 2% perturbation, the increase, in the what's called radiative forcing. But it's...
So, the idea, I mean, I guess, just to kind of help frame it for the populace, is the moon doesn't really have climate change because it doesn't have a climate, doesn't have really an atmosphere.
Right.
It's not holding any air.
No.
So we have that, and we have kind of an insulated effect around the surface.
We have an atmosphere, we have ocean, we have all sorts of things. The ocean is terribly important because water vapor is far and away the most important greenhouse gas. And it plays a huge role because it exists in various phases. So, you know, the vapor phase is a greenhouse gas. Upper level clouds are also greenhouse substances.
So we should get rid of clouds then, right?
Lower level clouds are reflectors. They reflect light. So clouds play a monumental role, and interestingly enough, none of the models we use can resolve clouds.
It's a funny thing. So I have I'm a medical doctor, but I kind of grew up in science and mathematics. So my degree is in chemistry and physics.
Okay.
And I didn't wind up being a chemist or a physicist. But you know, I have an interest in science, and I wrote a book that's out now called Overturning Zika, about the last forgotten pandemic of Zika microcephaly. And I spent a lot of time thinking about the definition of science and whether science is settled and whether it stays. Because the science of Zika is that there was a pandemic, but the closer I looked at it, I start, you know, seeing, I mean, it hasn't really recurred. So, you know, people can say something, that kind of these declarations of what people think is a body of knowledge is science, but science itself is a process of discovery and verification by experimentation.
Of course. I mean, you know, it used to be that Feynman could say, you know, if it's settled, it's not science.
That's Richard Feynman from MIT, correct?
No, he was Caltech.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Great speaker, though.
Yeah, you know, brilliant scientist and very honest scientist. No, I mean, the minute you hear science is settled, you know it's political.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, and Eisenhower anticipated this, for sciences like meteorology and oceanography, the state has a monopoly, the government has a monopoly on the funding. And it's fine as long as the state doesn't have a position. But if the state has a position, it's a disaster.
Yeah. So relating to some of the things that I've been paying more attention to, I don't want to spend a lot of time because this is your talk, but as far as COVID went, a lot of the data that we need to make decisions is difficult to get at because the CDC has it. So when the government's a repository, I'm just using this as an analogy, that it may be in their interest to give it out, and it may not be. Have you found any issues in that regard as far as
Yeah, I think the data has been reasonably available.
Mhm.
Trouble is, it can get polluted. And what people fail to realize is that there's a disconnect in this subject. And you hinted at it earlier. When you're looking at pictures and you're talking the temperature has increased a degree in 100 years. Most people, if they think about it for a moment, say, that ain't much.
Mhm.
Saying this is a sign of danger would be equivalent in medicine for somebody saying if your temperature is 98.8,
Right.
you put them on life support.
Right. And again, I've been watching your lectures, and you mentioned at one point, people don't go to the Arctic for vacations.
Oh,
They go to Florida. Preferentially we like warmer weather.
Oh.
That's not to say we don't want the place
it's
boiling.
also, if you look at weather-related deaths, those due to cold are 4 times more numerous than
Right.
those due to warmth.
But getting back to kind of infectious disease aspect in a way, I'm going to bring this as an analogy,
Okay.
is that something happens, but then people also react to it. So
course.
Ebola, and we keep hearing Ebola is going to be a pandemic, and so forth. Ebola is very dangerous, but what people don't factor in is that people react to Ebola. So when Ebola crops up in Congo or whatever, everyone else moves away from it.
Yeah.
So if there were to be problems from higher temperature, people wouldn't be static. They wouldn't stay in exactly the same places, and so forth. They're going to always move around and
It's
react.
already happened. I mean, it happens without any of man's influence. Climate always changes. So, for instance, until roughly the 70s or 80s, the panhandle of Florida, Tallahassee and so on, was citrus country, to the best of my knowledge. Ever since then, it's been too cold for citrus. That gets back to the temperature issue. Again, I ask you, what is this temperature? How do you take it? Where do you put the thermometer for the Earth's temperature?
That's an interesting point. And I have a side question for you, because I golf. I don't know why I have to do that, but I golf. And the golf course is 99% green,
Yeah,
plants and
I'm
what.
supposed to.
And there is a weather station on the golf course. Where is it? It's on a driveway next to the huge pile of gravel and sand, because I assume because that's the accessible place in case they want to fix it. So how much of the measurements have to do with kind of the heat sink of asphalt and so forth,
Yeah.
where we're sticking the thermometer in
I
certain
know.
places?
Well, first of all, remember, you're talking about one place.
Right. That is my only data point was this golf course.
No. But all I'm saying is any one place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking, what is the temperature of the Earth? Where do you stick the thermometer?
Well, not in the middle.
Well, the question is, what do? Do you average Mount Everest and the Dead Sea? Everyone knows that would be stupid. What they do is take a 30-year average at each station and then look at the deviation from that average on a seasonal or annual basis. And then, you can plot the points. And you'll notice none of these graphs of the temperature have the points. And there's a good reason they don't have the points. The points densely spread over a range of over 20 degrees.
Right. Now, I remember that from one of your,
Yeah.
again, this is difficult because we're on television. People should go to, I found on YouTube, Richard Lindzen, Lindzen, and you can search and find some of the referable drawings.
At any rate, you have this dense thing. You say, take the average. And as you mentioned, the average looks flat. When you then take away the data points and stretch the scale by a factor of 10, you then have a graph that looks like it's increasing.
Right.
And it is a little,
Right.
but it is a little. It's less than the temperature change you experience between breakfast and lunch.
Speaking of which, you know, as a physician, I have people, you know, concerned about their weight and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, people have a hard time understanding or believing that their actual weight doesn't change very much year to year to year to year. Obviously, there are times when people, you know, are going to go through metamorphosis and maybe lose 30 pounds, whatever. But for the most part, people have their body phenotype and with their weight, and year to year changes maybe 1% or less. And so, but on the other hand, people have all their Fitbit and all their you know, measured
measure it.
self, and they're watching up, down, 2 pounds, whatever. And so they get up and down based on, oh, I gained 2 pounds this week, and it could be water weight, it could be fat weight, it could be whatever. But over, you know, if you keep looking at the big picture, but people fuss and fuss and fuss. There's no end to the fussing.
Well, in this case, they miss a rather important point. And that is, at any given time, any given year, any given season, almost as many points are cooling as warming. Tells you nothing about your local behavior.
Right. So I'm going to try to segue
Yeah.
and bring us kind of more local. So, you know, people are going to take this with a grain of salt or not, but I want to maybe kind of bring us back to earth. I'm going to read the Newton recommendations for, you know, our future, our climate. So here, everyone opts up to 100% renewable electricity with Newton power choice. Check. 33% of cars purchased are electric. Check. 30% of homes insulated to the max. 16% of homes switched to electric heat pumps. And one of the corollaries of this is that they are, I guess, for new housing units, not allowing natural gas to flow. Thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, I mean, I occasionally, and I'm venturing out of my specialty, I think people who seek political leadership are suffering from a psychopathology. And, you know, there's a certain power-hungry something that is there. You can see it in elementary school when you think about the kids who ran for class president. You know.
Yes.
But-
I didn't, by the way.
Okay. But be that as it may, I think for some of these people, they know their life is inconsequential, and they're thinking, maybe I'll go down as somebody who saved the planet. There's certain grandiosity. There's also, of course, money. Anything you do to the energy sector involves trillions. And so the opportunities to make money on it are immense.
Yeah.
And so there's always corruption. There's always, you know,
So as far as like scientific based things that are actually going to, you know, fix the world, as it were, let's just kind of maybe go over 100% renewable electricity.
there's no such thing.
There is no such thing as 100% renewable. Why is that?
Well, you know, first of all, let's say that you're open-minded, and maybe someday somebody will figure out how to do that. But wind and solar are not. They're intermittent. So you need baseline. And you need baseline that is flexible, which actually militates against nuclear a little at present, though people are developing these small reactors and so on that might be able to do that. But at present, you're really in a terrible situation. In Europe, it's really bad, where to make up for the fact that the intermittent sources don't work, you have to have baseline, and the baseline has to keep on changing, which makes it less efficient.
Right.
And so you're ending up generating almost as much CO2, maybe even more when you consider that involved in the manufacture
Right.
of these things.
Yeah, no, Germany's an interesting situation. My understanding now is that Germany has plans for the winter to concentrate in warehouse situations. I mean, which could be a concentration lager in a sense, groups of people partially against their will. I mean, they're going to be voluntary. I don't want to make the analogy too deep here, but they're going to basically be in barracks in the cold to get people together because they're not going to have the energy because of Russia's sanctions against Germany,
Right.
but also primarily because Germany voluntarily turned off their nuclear.
And they turned off, they prevented fracking, they prevented everything.
Yeah.
They obsessed.
Yeah.
We're going to be spending the winter probably in France. We're taking sleeping.
When you say we, not you and I.
My wife and I. We're going to take sleeping bags.
Yeah, I worry for you. I worry.
They'll do something.
Well, France has not done that. France has maintained its nuclear power.
Not quite as much as you think.
Oh, really? They've been dropping them down?
Yeah, and they haven't been maintaining them.
Oh. Well, when I say maintain, I maintain the overall number of facilities.
Not quite. There are actually some that are being decommissioned.
Oh, mothballed?
Europe has not set a good example on energy policy.
Europe has this height of civilization and oftentimes the nadir for ideas. And it's a weird thing because it has, people may not realize this, but, till, say, the Great War, Germany was the height of civilization and probably thereafter as well. Most of all, when I was a chemistry major, as I mentioned, every bit of chemistry was German.
Yeah.
And the Germans had the best schools. Medicine itself, our model of medical schools came from the German model.
And our model of graduate studies came from Germany.
Yeah.
It's true. And Germany was a remarkable place.
So speaking, I'm going to segue maybe to one of our last points. So you have the elites, and this is something we've talked about privately. Germany has elite, as far as the world's concerned, maybe not individually, elite education, and it's led by presumably smart people. So what's up with that? I mean, how does this happen?
I think there's a problem with smart people.
Present company excluded.
Even maybe not. No, I've wondered about that. I mean, if you look at any given period in history, in modern history, let's say from 1800 on, it's been characterized by industrial and technical evolution. But the people who are known for it are a small, small percentage of the people who were professional. And so we always have orders of magnitude more people who are trained experts than those who have made historical contributions.
Yeah, I've read it somewhat differently insofar as like the real inventors are not those people who go to the meetings.
That's another story, but it's related. The question is, what about the rest who are not really doing stuff that's memorable? They suffer from what I call the good student complex. And what has the good student learned, and especially in non-scientific areas? He or she has learned to please the professor. So they've learned how to rationalize anything. And that isn't a terribly scientific or good habit. And we noticed that, in Germany, my father was a bootmaker, and he was an observant Jew. And I looked at his papers when he died, and he was admitted to the guild in 1935. In 1933, when Hitler came to power, before he even asked for it, the universities got rid of all their Jews, including people like Fritz Haber, you mentioned in chemistry, the inventor of the nitrogen cycle, the inventor of poison gas, a German nationalist who had converted to Lutheranism. He was fired. So, I worry a little about smart people.
Right. It can be cliquish.
Well, it's not just that. France, for instance, gets a bad rap for World War II. But close to 80% of the Jews survived in France.
Right.
And the reason it gets a bad rap is doctors, lawyers, judges, government functionaries behave badly, but ordinary people behaved well.
Fair enough. So we're going to end in just a minute or two. So do you have kind of a local message you'd like to close with, and or global, for our audience?
The global one is one which I think people will be upset to hear. But the whole greenhouse narrative makes no sense when related to major climate change for the Earth. It is something that is peculiar to the tropics, and what happens in the extratropics never amplifies what's happening at the equator. And when you go to major climate change, the ice ages, 50 million years ago when there were alligators in Spitsbergen, the tropics never change, a degree or two. Mm-hmm. And that means that no matter what you do in pumping stuff out, they're resilient. Mm-hmm. Our whole picture of this being even slightly dangerous is based on something that contradicts everything scientists ever said. Scientists used to have something called Le Chatelier's principle. It says, you know, if you try and perturb the system, it resists.
That's kind of what I was mentioning about Ebola, so forth. People react to the thing that happens.
Yeah, of course. And nature does too.
Right.
That's the point.
And that was the point I'm making about carbon dioxide in the trees.
In the models today, they assume that nature acts to amplify.
Right. So we're going to have to close pretty much now.
Okay.
But if you have a word on the local basis, what do you think about what Newton does? Do you have any, like 30 seconds?
It's obviously irrelevant to anything dealing with climate. Theoretically, it would be irrelevant on fundamental grounds. But even if you believe the models, it still does nothing. The cost benefit is
right, and the cost,
terrible.
I think the cost will be high,
Oh,
because
yeah.
when you take away the opportunity to have natural gas, you're going to be stuck with electricity, and that could, you know, wind up wavering and varying in cost.
No, nothing about this makes sense.
Right. So we're going to have to wrap up. Okay. We could use more time and so forth. Please write in, let us know what you thought, and if you'd like to have Dick back sometime or ask him questions, whatever, we can try to arrange that. So forth. I'm very happy to have had him as a guest. I'm honored. And we are the Newton Taxpayer Association. Come visit us on Facebook at Newton Taxpayer Association. And we need your help. We need your support. So please contact us, and we'd like to reach out and have you help us help you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.